Ever wondered what a Mario game would look like from a Goomba's perspective? Well, I challenged myself to make a game in 3 days where you play as the Goomba and Mario is the villain, so let's find out. This video is sponsored by Bezi, more on that a bit later. The project will be a first-person horror game, my first one by the way. Hopefully it's not completely terrible. I'm gonna go with Unity 2021.3 with the built-in render pipeline just because it's compatible with this PSX shader that I really like. Then I'm gonna spend a couple minutes organizing my project, my hierarchy, and importing some essential packages. Next, let's install Bezi, and if you're wondering what it is, it's basically an AI assistant that integrates directly into your Unity project. You can notice here that it has two modes, Ask and Agent. Ask can obviously be used for tasks like asking simple questions, brainstorming, and documentation. The agent will go through all your assets and code and give you a detailed explanation like in this case, which will save you hours of research when you're starting to work with a new asset or inheriting an older codebase from someone else. Agent mode, on the other hand, will give Bezi permission to modify your existing code and create new scripts, which will let you take care of tedious and complex tasks a lot faster, allowing you to be more creative and have more fun. I was honestly pretty impressed to see that it can handle complex systems, create editor tools and shaders, and even the quality of the code is a lot better than something that you would get from Claude or ChatGPT. And that's mainly because Bezi has context awareness, which allows it to analyze your assets and references before generating what you need. Obviously, this comes with a bit of a risk. I'm not advocating you to let Bezi write the entirety of your code. You still need to plan your architecture, understand everything that you put in, and test all the changes before accepting them. And always remember that you can just undo them by pressing this button. Overall, I have to say that I enjoy Bezi, and it managed to increase my productivity in a major way. Last week, I managed to create this small basketball prototype in just a couple days, which would have normally taken me a week or even more. So I highly encourage you to check it out as well. They have a free plan, you can go check it out, create a new project, make a small prototype and see if you like it. The link will be in the description. Let's start making the game now. Every game needs a player object, so let's create one. I'm gonna use some placeholder materials just for visibility, and since this is a first-person game, I'm gonna slap the main camera underneath the player object. And after a couple minutes of writing some boring code, we can now move and look around. But something's still off, the player and the camera are too high for a Goomba. So let's take care of that by dragging the camera down and squashing the player capsule. Good enough for now. Next, I want to start working on the level generation. My idea for this part was to randomly generate a maze and place the player at an entrance. The goal is to get to the exit, but that might not be so easy because Mario is patrolling the maze. At first, he's gonna be more focused on collecting coins and mushrooms, but the longer you leave him, the more aggressive he'll get. I really want to try this out to create some sense of urgency in players and so you can't hide indefinitely. So I got to work. First, I let Bezi do the heavy lifting and build the basics of level generation. And the cool thing about it, as you can see, first it's gonna analyze the project, then it's gonna do some external research based on Unity manuals and even YouTube videos. And this is what the first version looks like. I have to say that I don't like that the hallways are too tight, that might cause the player to get stuck when running away, but other than that, it's pretty great. But now let me start adding rooms, Mario himself and some patrol points so that he walks around the maze.
3 hours later.
Just finished tweaking everything and as you can see now the level is a lot more spacious, which means the players will have more opportunities to hide and run away. I also positioned some ambient lights here and there to help the player see in the dark and some hiding spots, although these are just empty game objects for now. And when I enter play mode, the game currently looks like this. Nothing amazing but serviceable for now. And just by looking at this, I really want to start adjusting the global lighting and the PSX shader, but I'm gonna leave that for a bit later. For now, I'm gonna focus on creating the basic Mario AI, just so we have some semblance of gameplay. Because the levels in the game will be static and because I'm a bit lazy, I decided to use the Unity's Nav Mesh tool. And basically everything I had to do here is mark the ground as walkable and the walls as non-walkable. Mario himself will use a Nav Mesh agent component for pathfinding, and the Mario AI script implements an area of sight that's shown by the blue cone in front of him. If the player is inside that cone and is visible, Mario will immediately start chasing him. And to determine visibility, I just used a simple raycast. I also implemented a hearing radius shown by the red circle, so that players can just walk right behind him and remain undetected. And finally, the patrol points which Mario will use to patrol the level will be scattered randomly, but evenly when creating the level. Still not sure about this idea though, because this might create some gaps in his patrol route where the player can stay hidden forever. But hey, good enough for now. And to show you how this looks inside the game, I will activate the gizmo so you can see through the walls. As you can see at the start, he's behaving normally and going from one patrol point to another. For now I'm gonna stay hidden behind the walls, but if I enter his hearing radius and he has a direct line of sight on me, he will instantly turn around and start chasing. I'll need to make this a bit more gradual for sure, and I'll probably need to add an investigation state, because right now it's way too easy to lose him if you just start running and changing your directions often. I'll probably need to make Mario faster than the player as well. But we do have a basic gameplay loop. My main problem right now though is that it's way too easy to get lost in a maze and have no idea where you're going, and my solution for this was to add a mini-map. My initial approach was to take the maze data from my level builder script and then use it to draw the minimap onto a render texture. But I ended up overcomplicating everything and just wasting an hour of precious time. So I took a step back and went with a much simpler solution. I created a secondary camera, positioned it above the level and set the culling mask to a specific layer that only contains the minimap icons. Then underneath each object that will be visible on the minimap, so like the floors, the walls, the player, Mario, etc., I positioned a simple minimap icon that has a sprite render. Then I went to the main camera and unchecked this layer in the culling mask so that we don't see these icons inside the game. A very unexpected benefit of this method was the fact that I could very easily control the transparency of minimap icons, which got me thinking about the fog of war feature. So I made all the icons invisible at the start, and as you move closer to them they will gradually be revealed, which I think will add to the tension. And after all the changes, the minimap looks like this. I'll probably end up applying the PSX shader to it as well, and I'm still debating whether to show the Mario icon on the minimap or not. But I'm in the middle of day 2 and I need to get going, because the game still looks like crap and doesn't have any sound or music. Anyone who's played a horror game knows how important darkness is and setting the atmosphere. And the game currently is way too bright. So I start off by completely removing the environment lighting and reflections. But even after all these changes you can see that the level is still too light, and that's because of the ambient lights. So I'm going to drastically reduce their intensity. And also I'm gonna give them a slightly red color, because red equals scary? But at the same time, keeping the player in complete darkness is gonna be confusing, frustrating and unfair. So I'm gonna create a light around the player that's gonna help you see in your vicinity. I'm gonna give this one a slightly yellow color, kinda like a lantern. Then let's press play and see how the game looks now. As expected, darkness made everything a lot more unpredictable, and even I was a bit on the edge because I never knew what may come from around a corner.
Hello, motherfucker.
Almost at the end of day 2 and the game still looks like doo-doo, so let's move on to fixing the graphics. First of all, I want to take care of the wall and floor textures, because that's what you're gonna be looking at for most of the game. So I hopped into Sprite, quickly drew a simple brick texture and gave it a dark blue color. Then I dragged it into Unity, changed the tiling, and the final result looks like this. Alright, moving on to the floors now. Initially I drew this style, but I didn't like it because first it was too dark and secondly the pattern was too elegant for the maze. So I ended up drawing this stone tile instead, which seems a lot more fitting. Now it's time to move on to the next most important thing, which is the villain. Let me tell you a little secret. My blender skills are shite. I was genuinely surprised I could model the pipe myself. Thankfully there's Sketchfab and people with actual skills that can save my ass from embarrassment. So I took the model, changed the textures a little bit, and this is what I came up with. Doesn't look completely horrible, so I think I'll go with this. Next up I need to animate this, which is also something I cannot do. So let's go to Mixamo and rig this real quick. So here's the model with all the animations. Obviously the head and the neck are kinda messed up, but I think I'll leave it like this, because 1, I don't have enough time, and 2, I think it adds to the creepy vibe. I then went on to find a Goomba model and squashing it to make an environment prop, a door model to show the exit of a level, and I even made it illuminated so you can see it in the dark better, and a torch model with some particles. So this is how the game looks at the end of day 2. Pretty happy to be honest, but I still got a lot of tasks left for day 3.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
It's the start of the last day and I still have to implement a lot of gameplay mechanics and finish the levels. So what do I choose to focus on first? The main menu, obviously.
I'm not a smart man.
So I start off by doing some basic stuff like planning the position of the elements, choosing the fonts and assigning the methods for all the buttons. But I was feeling pretty inspired, so a bit less than an hour later my menu was already looking like this. I also changed the name of the game to The Maze, which feels more appropriate, and I added some effects to make the background image more dynamic. And now I finally decided to get it together and focus on what's the most important. First, I needed a win condition. That was pretty straightforward. I just put a trigger collider on the door and put it on a separate layer. Then I have a collision handler script on the player which registers the collision and calls a method on the game manager. When this happens, the gameplay stops, a simple UI window pops up that takes you to the next level and registers your progress. This was pretty easy. Losing, on the other hand, turned out to be a bit more tricky. I created a separate script and placed it on Mario, which first disables the navigation for both Mario and the player, and then it kind of starts a scripted sequence, which will be easier to show than just explain. Obviously this is the first version, so it's looking a bit rough for now, especially with all the clipping going on, but I kinda like it. And if you're wondering, this is also the point where I started adding sounds to the game as well. And I really wanted to experiment with spatial sounds, especially for Mario. So I put a couple of audio sources on him and set our spatial blend to 3D, meaning that the closer he is to you, the louder you will hear the sounds. And then I used these 3 audio clips for the steps. And this one for when the player is detected. If you're making a game like this as well, I highly recommend you check out the Time Machine plugin for Audacity. It helped me out a lot when making these sound effects. It's completely free and it's very easy to use. I followed this up by creating and implementing all the other sound effects. And also camera shake on Mario's footsteps depending on how close he is to you. And I think I'm gonna keep this because 1, it makes me more scared, and 2, it gives a clear indicator of danger. The next problem I wanna solve is the minimap. In previous builds where it used to be always active, I ended up staring at it for way too long, and it also made the game too easy. So then I removed it entirely. But this wasn't good either, because it made the game too hard and I got lost way too often. My solution for this was allowing the player to open the minimap when pressing the M key, but when you're doing that you cannot move, so you have to be smart about it. I'm not sure about this, but this was the best I can come up with, so if you play the game, do let me know what you think. Next on the list is implementing the hiding mechanic. I used the pipe model for this because that's what made the most sense to me as a thing that you can hide inside of. And the logic here is extremely simple. Once you are in the trigger area, you can press the E key to hide inside the pipe. You will not be detected unless you are seen going in which case, well, it's not gonna help you very much.
Please help me.
Obviously I disabled the player movement when you are inside, and I also limited the angle at which you can look around. And I also added a kind of vignette effect to simulate the view of you being inside the pipe. There also might be a little secret related to the hiding mechanic. Let me know when you find it. And the last mechanic I want to squeeze inside the game are the coins. Both Mario and the player will be able to pick them up, and they will grant a permanent speed boost. But again, the sound will be an X factor here, because when Mario picks up a coin, you will be able to hear it and detect his position more or less. But when you do, he might be able to detect you and he will come investigate right away if he is inside the yellow radius. And finally I'm up to my last task, which is building the levels. The builder that I created earlier really came in handy here because it allowed me to generate layouts very quickly. Although I still ended up positioning all the important objects manually just because I wanted to make sure that the level is playable and more or less fun. When all the levels were ready, I just had to check a couple things first. 1. If the navigation works fine, and 2. Every Unity developer's favorite activity, baking the light maps.
No! God, please, no! No!
And after playing the game one last time, I was a bit worried that not all the players will understand the controls, so I put in a couple simple tutorial messages in the first 2 levels. And finally the game is up on itch.io. I'm gonna make it public once the video goes up, and hopefully you manage to play it, because, you know, anything can happen.
Hello there.